You look tired. I am tired. Sit. Don't stand there like you've seen a ghost. I don't know how to sit with this in my chest. Then tell me. Tell me what happened. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, like someone had folded it and put it in a drawer. She set a paper cup on the table with hands that trembled just enough to make the liquid slosh. She pushed the sleeve up. I froze. It's nothing, she said, quick and thin. Just a stupid fall. That's not a fall. It was a bike. You don't ride a bike. Laughing helps the lie, she mumbled. Please don't make a scene. A nurse passed by the visiting room glass and offered a polite smile without stopping. He didn't look twice at the purplish shadow rippling under her skin. He assumed what everyone assumed, a clumsy moment, a life made of little accidents. He didn't know the difference between bruises and blame. Why are you wearing long sleeves in July? I asked, and tried not to sound like I meant everything at once. It's hot, she said, like the word could seal off the place under her collar. I don't like the sun much these days. She laughed, and the laugh made me ache. It was the old laugh, the one that used to fill the kitchen at midnight when we were kids stealing cookies. But this laugh cracked at the edges. I saw it split into a dozen small, brittle pieces. Tell me what happened, I said again, softer. Please. She swallowed. The throat move was small. Maybe no one else would notice. But I had watched the slow betrayals of other women in group therapy. The way a detail would slide out, tiny and ashamed, and the story would unfold like a bruise blooming. I'd been here 10 years. My whole education had been in survival and attention. He grabbed me, she whispered. He grabbed my arm. I tried to pull away and, I don't know. I hit my head on the sink. So he hit you? No, Her eyes went wet for a second, then she blinked it away with the force of someone who'd practiced the trick. I fell down the stairs. You're lying to me. I'm not, she said, the words like fragile china. It sounds worse when I say it out loud. Who else was there? I pressed. The room hummed with stale air, and the fluorescent lights flickered like a tired promise. A small digital clock ticked at the wall. The seconds sounded like a metronome for my blood. She looked past me at the glass, at the corridor where other visitors walked like ghosts in suits. He was there, she said. His sister was there. His mother. They were there. Were you scared? She laughed again, and the laugh was salt. Of course I was scared. Lena, Her hand covered her mouth, and for the first time I saw the little girl behind the adult face, the one who used to hide in our closet and listen to the world. I remembered the fights that had brought me here, the moment I'd been branded dangerous, the way neighbors pointed and whispered. I remembered the slammed doors and the hospital corridors, the certainty that the world thought me unfit to decide my own fate. People had called me unstable, had said I needed to be kept away from the family I could tear apart with my temper. For 10 years that had been my life, measured, confined, predictable. And yet the sight of her arm, dark and angry beneath skin, did something in me that the years could not numb. A muscle in my jaw tightened. My hands that had learned to count ceiling cracks and memorize staff schedules, wanted to reach through the glass and wipe it clean. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked. She shook her head. They said he was sorry. They said he would stop. He promised. He was sweet at first. You remember that? The way he smiled in December, how he fixed the broken gate? I thought it was just hard times. I thought if I kept quiet, it would be okay. Quiet makes things worse, I said. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. You know that. She looked at me, not as a sister, but as something more fragile. I didn't want you to be right, she whispered. I didn't want you to be the kind of person who would say, I told you so, and mean it. You think I'd savor that? I felt my face burn at the thought. You think I wanted to be the kind of person the world labeled? Don't be ridiculous. She smiled briefly, a sad small thing. It's been hard, she said. I hide it. I tell myself I'm careful, but sometimes he's different when his mother is around. He drinks, he gets angry. He blames me for everything. Does she watch it? She watches and laughs, she said, voice dropping so low it was a thread. She calls me clumsy. She says I'm ungrateful for taking the family in. She makes me scrub until my hands bleed. There are marks. She tugged the sleeve against her skin. A thin, embarrassed motion. Once I thought about leaving. But then he promised to change, and I wanted to believe him. We fell into a quiet that thrummed like a wire about to snap. The visiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and lemon. A child's drawing stuck to the vending machine across the hall. A sun with jagged rays that made me think of lies that try to look happy. "You have to leave," I said finally, the words tasting like metal. "You can't stay." "I can't just leave," she replied. "Where would I even go? Mom is fragile. You know how she is. And Ella." She flinched at the name of her daughter, and I felt my heart lurch. "I can't take Ella away from everything. You can't keep her here either." She broke. The confession slipped like water from a cracked cup. "He hit her," she said. "He hit Ella last week. A handprint on her cheek. I tried to stop him and he shoved me and I hit my head. He told the neighbors I fell. They believed him because he looked helpless when he called them." "He's a liar," I said. The word came out cold and true. "He's a bully who knows how to put on a mask." She looked at me then, and the fear was raw and alive. "Please," she begged, the single syllable thin and trembling. "Please don't tell anyone." "Why?" "They'll take Ella, they'll take me. They'll say I'm both crazy and unfit, and I'll lose everything." "You already lost enough," I said. My chest felt hollow and full at the same time. Years of looking out through barred windows had taught me to measure freedom in small things. "But you're not losing her today." Her smile came like a child's hand pressed to glass, hopeful, hesitant. "You're angry," she said. "You always were. You always said you'd do something." "I'm careful now," I said. "Careful doesn't mean silent." She reached across the small table and touched my wrist. Her fingers were cool. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me you won't tell them everything." "Not yet. Wait until I can be sure." She swallowed hard. "Promise me." I looked at her, at the bruise blooming along her forearm like a secret fruit. I thought of the hospital staff who walked past the suffering like it was a page in someone else's book. I thought of all the women in group therapy, their stories a catalogue of small deaths. I thought of the way the world gasped at a man's woe and shrugged at a woman's. "Promise," I said, because lying wasn't part of me anymore. The word landed between us like a pact. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "Good. You always were stubborn. And you always were forgiving," I said. "I had to be," she said, "for Ella." For a long moment we sat there, two identical faces separated by a pane of glass and a decade of life choices. Outside the visiting room, footsteps shuffled on linoleum and a cart clattered down the hall. Someone was turning the page of a magazine. The small clock continued its patient march. As she left, she hugged me clumsily, a public gesture we allowed because the room held witnesses. Her fingers dug into my shoulders as if to anchor herself in a world that kept slipping. She smelled like lemon soap and a faint perfume she used for special occasions. "Take care of yourself," she said into my ear. Her breath was hot and tasted like fear. "I will," I said. At the door she paused and looked back. For a beat, the visitor's corridor held only her silhouette against the light, a thin, human outline that could easily be blown away. She turned and walked out. I watched her go until the glass hid her figure completely, until the door clicked shut and the soundtrack of the hospital returned, the distant murmur of televisions, the soft clink of cutlery, the hum of fluorescent lights. I could not make myself leave the bench. My hands curled into fists and unclenched. The bruise on her arm unfolded like an accusation in the dim light. That night I lay awake with the hospital's ceiling staring back at me. I had learned the language of quiet, how to breathe without alarming the nurses, how to count ceiling tiles until my mind dulled, how to make a small life in a room that wasn't mine. The image of her arm would not leave me. Her whispered plea vibrated in my bones. I thought about promises, how they can be chains or lifelines. I had been promised stability, medication, a life safe from the chaos outside. I had been promised help. The promises had rarely stayed, but a new promise, the one I had given her, sat heavy and luminous in my chest. I knew then with the slow, cold certainty of someone who has had to plan around guards and routines that this would not be fixed by a single visit. The bruise was a symptom, not the disease. There were names behind it, habits, a family that closed ranks. There would be 1,000 small lies to untangle. Sleep did not come. I sat up and listened to the night. A door closing, footsteps in the corridor, the distant radio still playing someone else's life. My hands found the thin metal of the bedrail and gripped it until my knuckles went white. For the first time in years, the walls around me felt less like a cage and more like a starting line. I would not be able to stay silent. The thought burned like a brand. I could not sit behind these walls while she went back to that house. I could not be the one who had always watched and said nothing. There were choices that had built my life here. Tonight I realized some choices could unmake it. If I moved, if I stepped out into the world that had once been too loud and too sharp, there were consequences I had learned to fear. But watching her leave with fear in her eyes had woken something in me that years of restraint had not killed. The bruise was not only on her arm, it was on the ledger of our family, and I intended to balance it. I made a promise to myself then, as the hospital clock ticked and the night deepened. I would find a way. The idea felt reckless, dangerous, perhaps insane to some. But I had been called crazy before. Crazy or not, I could feel the thread of a plan beginning to knit itself in my mind. Tomorrow, I told myself, I would watch for her again. Tomorrow, I will learn more. Tomorrow, I would decide whether silence was still an option. And in the dark, with the ceiling tiles like a map overhead, I knew silence was no longer possible. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. Same face, same freckles, same eyes, but everything behind them felt sharper, louder, harder. My reflection looked like me, but it wasn't Lena's softness that stared back. It was fire, the kind that doesn't burn out, just waits. I whispered to the glass, "You and I have the same face." So why is she the one who keeps bleeding? The next week crawled by. Every sound in the ward, every click of the nurse's shoes, every hum of the fluorescent light felt like a countdown. When I finally saw her name on the visitors list again, my chest tightened so fast it almost hurt. She walked into the visiting room slowly, carrying that same paper cup of tea she always brought. But this time the cup shook. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine." "You said that last time." "I mean it this time." "Then why are your hands shaking?" She set the cup down. The tea rippled like her pulse. "It's just been a rough week." "What kind of rough?" She looked away. "Don't start, Maya." "I'm not starting anything." "I'm asking. Let's not fight, please. I just wanted to see you." I leaned back, studying her. Her face was thinner. The makeup was heavier. And when she reached for her napkin, the sleeve of her cardigan slipped down just far enough for me to see it. Deep, purple marks wrapping her wrist like fingerprints. "What's that?" She yanked the sleeve up. "Nothing." "Don't lie to me." "It's nothing, Maya. Don't lie," I said again, sharper this time. "Tell me what happened." She froze. The silence was thick enough to make the air hum. Then her mouth trembled. I dropped a pan. "A pan did that?" "I said drop—" "Lena," I interrupted, leaning in. "A bruise like that doesn't come from a pan. Someone grabbed you." Her eyes darted toward the door. "Keep your voice down." "I won't," I hissed. "Who did this?" Her lips pressed together like she was trying to stop the words from escaping. Then she whispered a name that made my stomach twist. "Ethan." The sound of it filled the space like a poison gas. "Your husband?" She nodded, eyes wet now. "Please don't look at me like that." "What did he do?" "It's not—" "What did he do, Lena?" Her voice cracked. "He got angry. He said I was spending too much, that I should be grateful. He grabbed me. It's not the first time, but this time it got out of hand." Out of hand. I hated how calm she sounded saying it. Like she was describing a bad recipe. "Why didn't you call the police?" "You don't understand how it is," she said. "They'll believe him, not me." "Because he's a man?" "Because he's normal. And I'm the woman who married him after my sister got locked away for violence. They'll think it runs in the family." Her words hit me like a slap. I swallowed the anger that rose in my throat. "You're saying you're trapped because of me?" "I'm not blaming you." "Yes, you are." She shook her head fiercely. "No, Maya. I'm saying you know what it's like to have people decide who you are before you even speak." I looked at her hands, tiny tremors, a life of apology living in her skin. "You think I don't know that?" I said quietly. "They decided what I was the day they locked the door." She flinched. "Don't talk like that." "Like what?" "Like you're dangerous again." "I am dangerous," I said, and the words came out low, cold. "Just not to you." Her eyes filled again. "Please don't do anything stupid." "Then tell me the truth, Lena. How long has he been hitting you?" She took a deep breath. Since Ella was born. At first it was small things. A shove, a yell. His mother said I was too dramatic, that I made him angry. But then he stopped pretending. If dinner was late, if Ella cried too loud, if I looked tired, it didn't matter. And you stayed. I stayed because I thought love could fix it. And because I was scared. I leaned closer. You're not the one who should be scared. Maya, stop. Don't do this. Do what? Want justice? Want you alive? You'll ruin everything. Everything's already ruined. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed quietly. I just wanted to see you, she said through the tears. I didn't come here for this, but I couldn't unhear it. The way she said Ethan, the way she shook, the way she looked like she'd already been buried somewhere invisible. The nurse knocked softly on the glass, signaling 5 minutes left. Lena wiped her face fast, like the tears could be erased if she moved quickly enough. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't apologize. I always do. Well, stop. She tried to smile, but it only made her look more broken. You can't fix this, Maya. I met her eyes. Watch me. Maya, do you really think I'm going to sit here and let him hurt you again? What are you going to do? Break out? March to my house? You can't even leave without a guard signing you out. I don't need permission, I said. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. You forget, Lena, I whispered. I've had 10 years to think about what people deserve. That's not who you are anymore, she pleaded. You've changed. I haven't, I said. I've just been waiting. She stared at me, part terrified, part hopeful. And I knew in that moment she was beginning to understand what I'd already decided. This wouldn't end with another visit, another lie, another bruise. The nurse opened the door. Time's up, she said. Lena stood, fixing her cardigan, making sure the sleeves covered everything. Promise me, she said softly. Promise me you'll stay here, Maya. Don't get involved. I stood too. I can't make that promise. Please, don't come back next week if you expect me to do nothing. She looked down at her hands. I just wanted to see my sister. And you did. I met her eyes. Now let me be your sister. Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. She just nodded once, turned, and walked out the door. The room went quiet again, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. I watched her disappear down the corridor, the back of her cardigan catching the pale light like a ghost fading into distance. I looked back at the mirror, the same one that hung above the table. For a long time, I just stared. I saw her face in mine. The same skin, same mouth, same bones, but something inside had shifted. My reflection didn't look trapped anymore. She looked ready. I whispered to it, you and I, we're not done yet. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt the world outside these walls begin to pull me toward it. Because now, the idea that had always lived in the back of my mind, the one I told myself was just fantasy, didn't feel so impossible anymore. I could take her place. I could make him pay. And this time, no one would call it madness. You've lost your mind. Her voice cracked as she said it, half whisper, half plea. Do you even hear yourself, Maya? This isn't a movie. You can't just walk out and pretend to be me. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, eyes locked on hers. I can, and I will. She stared at me like I was something she didn't recognize. You'd get caught before you even reached the door. No one will notice. They don't look closely at faces here, Lena. They look at files. They look at patterns. Same face, same hair, same voice. All I have to do is walk out when visiting time ends. You stay in my room. You don't talk too much. You'll be safe here. Safe? She laughed, but it was a broken sound. You call this place safe? You've spent 10 years locked behind those walls. You want me to take your place in here? It's better than the hell you're living in. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, I said quietly. He's hurting you. And now he's hurting Ella. You think I can sit here and let that continue? Her hands flew up, shaking. He'll kill you if you show up there. Then I'll die doing something that matters. Don't, she whispered. Don't talk like that. I reached across the table and took her wrist. The bruises were yellowing now, layered with fresh purple blotches. You think I don't see what he's already doing? You think if I do nothing, you'll somehow be okay? Tears welled up in her eyes. You'll ruin both our lives. Our lives are already ruined, Lena. The only difference is... I paused, letting the words hang. Mine's already been taken from me. Yours doesn't have to be. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. I could feel the hum of the fluorescent light above us, the smell of cheap disinfectant filling the room. "You can't just switch places," she whispered, but her tone was weaker now. "They'd find out. Not if we do it right." Her eyes darted around the room as if someone might be listening. "How?" "Simple. When visiting hours end, you'll sit on my bed. I'll wear your clothes, your bracelet, and walk out when the nurse comes to escort visitors out. No one will question it. They've seen you here every month for years. You're harmless, polite. They won't stop you. And me? You stay quiet. You read, you rest. You're safe here. You can heal." She shook her head. "And what about you? I'll handle your husband." "Handle him?" she said, voice rising. "You think this is some kind of revenge story? You think he'll just let you walk into that house and change everything?" "He won't have a choice." "You've forgotten how the world works," she snapped. "They won't believe you." "They'll believe him. He'll twist it like he always does." I smiled faintly. "That's why I'm not going to ask for belief. I'm going to make him stop." She went pale. "You mean—" "I mean I'll make sure he never touches you or Ella again." Her breath hitched. "You can't just hurt him, Maya. He's already hurting both of you." "I'm not talking about revenge. I'm talking about balance. Balance doesn't come from violence." "Sometimes it does," I said. "Sometimes it's the only language monsters understand." She looked down, and for a moment neither of us spoke. The ticking clock on the wall felt deafening. Finally, she whispered, "You'll go back to prison. Or worse. Then at least the world will know who I really am. Not crazy, not broken, just someone who couldn't stay silent anymore." She leaned forward, eyes desperate. "You think you're saving me, but you're not. You'll lose yourself out there. You're not ready for the world anymore. I'm more ready than you think. 10 years, Maya. 10 years in this place. You haven't touched real air, real people, real anything. You think you can just walk out and pretend to be me? Pretending is what you've been doing," I said. "Smiling while he breaks you. Apologizing for his sins. That's pretending. I'm done pretending." Her tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "Please," she said. "Don't do this." I exhaled slowly. "Lena, when I look at you, I see me, but smaller, scared, dimmed down to survive. You were never meant to live like that. You don't get it." "I do," I said, softer now. "That's why I have to do this." Her voice trembled. "You think this will save me, but it'll destroy you." I stood, moving toward the small mirror on the wall. Maybe that's the point. Maybe I've been here too long, waiting for something that would matter again. The woman in the reflection looked both of us in the eye, calm, unbreakable. I turned back to her. "We can't both stay prisoners. I can't let you. You don't have to let me. Just don't stop me." The next day came faster than I expected. She showed up with trembling hands, carrying an extra cardigan and her visitor ID. "I can't believe we're doing this," she murmured. "You don't have to believe it," I said. "Just trust it." She looked at me one last time, eyes shining with fear and guilt. "If they find out, they won't. I'll never forgive myself if something happens to you." "Then don't," I said gently. "Just live. That'll be enough." We moved quickly, traded shoes, sweaters, and the small plastic bracelets. I gave her my hospital tag. She gave me her ID with the faded photo. Her hands shook so badly that I had to fasten the clasp myself. "You're shaking," I whispered. "I'm terrified." "Good," I said. "That means you still care." When the bell rang to signal the end of visiting hours, we froze. Every sound felt louder. The nurse's footsteps echoed down the hall. "Remember," I said under my breath, "don't talk too much. Keep your head down. Read, eat, sleep. No one will bother you." Her eyes were wide. "And you?" "I'll walk out like I belong there." The door opened. The nurse smiled faintly. "Mrs. Hale, time to go." I swallowed hard, straightened my shoulders, and forced a timid smile, the one Lena always wore. "Thank you," I said, matching her soft tone. The nurse didn't even glance twice. Lena sat on my bed, clutching the visitor pass in her hand like it was a lifeline. Our eyes met one last time, identical, but worlds apart. As the nurse led me down the corridor, my pulse roared in my ears. The air changed. The walls widened. Each step felt unreal, like walking out of a dream I'd been trapped in for too long. When we reached the double doors, the guard buzzed me out. No questions, no hesitation. Just a click, a push, and then the outside hit me like heat after a storm. The air was thick, sharp, alive. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in. 10 years since I'd smelled sunlight and exhaust. 10 years since I'd felt the sky without bars between us. Freedom didn't taste sweet. It tasted electric, dangerous. Every sound was sharper. Car horns, distant voices, the flap of pigeons' wings. I touched the ID in my pocket. Lena Hale. I wasn't walking out for me. I was walking out for her. And somewhere beyond this road, a man named Ethan had no idea his quiet little world had just cracked open. Because tonight he'd meet his wife, and she wouldn't be the same. You smell like the hospital. I wash. Do you still cry at night? No. Then don't. The little voice was smaller than the house. I crouched until my face was level with hers and tried to make my voice soft. The doll she clutched had no hair on one side and one eye sewn shut with a blue thread. Hi, I said. Don't call me that, she whispered. You said you were Mommy. I'm here now. I'm here. She studied my face like she was checking for cracks. Her fingers twisted the doll's arm until a seam popped. Are you hungry? I asked. A little. Show me what you want. She pointed at a plate on the floor with crumbs and a dried smear of something that used to be sauce. The room smelled like stale bread and spilled beer. A stack of bills lay folded under a calendar, and a child's drawing of a sun was pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a heart. The sun had more black than yellow. You don't have to hide the good food, I said, more to myself than her. Mommy hides it, she said. She says there isn't any. You have a secret fridge? I asked. Under the boxes. I moved quietly, lifting a stained towel and peering into a small compartment. 2 apples, a half-pack of yogurt, a ready-to-eat chicken leg wrapped in plastic, everything shoved to the back, covered in shadows. Who made you hide your food? I said. Grandma. Grandma? Her eyes flicked to the hallway. Footsteps thumped, hard and certain. The voice that followed scraped like a knife. Lena, where's dinner? Don't be slack. I felt my throat go dry. The woman who filled the hallway with that voice appeared in the doorway like she belonged to the house itself. Short, hands always busy, a cardigan buttoned to the throat. You again, she said, looking me up and down with a slow, cruel interest. You look like bone today. Eat less and you'll vanish, dear. It's warm in here, I said, keeping my tone gentle. She's hungry. The woman's lips thinned. She'll eat what she's given. Where's the rest of the chicken? There's some here. You don't get to paw through my things, love, she snapped. Sit and set the table. A younger woman slipped out of the hallway then, heavy with perfume and attitude. She carried a bag of chips like a trophy and nudged her son forward, a small boy with a permanent scowl. Give that to me, he said, grabbing the doll. No, I said, moving before he could crush its head. Leave her things alone. He shoved back, and for a second his face looked like a mask of entitlement. The woman with perfume laughed, loud and sharp. Let him play, she said. He'll learn to be tough. Tough? I echoed. Or cruel. They both laughed like it was a joke. The small boy kicked a toy across the room. Ella flinched, and for a second I saw the whole of her life in that flinch, a long string of small violences, of being made invisible. Who are you? The elder woman demanded. I'm staying here, I said simply. Lena asked for a rest. You? You think you can just... She started, then stopped because her voice didn't have the bite it wanted. It looked like the house had taken the shape of fear from everyone who lived inside, and it wasn't biting back at me. Make the tea, she ordered the younger woman. Don't stand there like you're brave. You don't have to be mean, the younger woman said, pushing a strand of hair back. She's different. Different is weak, the older woman said. And weak needs rules. I set the plate down in front of Ella and tore the chicken into pieces. She watched me with a slow hunger, like each bite could teach her what safety tasted like. Who's your name? I asked between bites. Ella, she said. You're not Mommy. I know, I said. But I'm here tonight. Will you cry? She whispered. Mommy cries sometimes. She says sorry then. I don't cry at the table, I promised. Not tonight. The younger woman watched me like she was trying to figure out which side to be on. You from around here? She asked. No, I said. I'm staying for a while. She offered a small smile, the first human thing since I'd walked through the door. Where's Sophia? She said, and for a beat, just a beat, She looked like someone who used to care about smaller things. Then her smile hardened again, as if she'd been coached to forget it. "You'll scrub the counters tonight," the older woman said. "And don't you dare hide anything." "Yes, Margaret," Sophia replied. "I'll do it." The words sounded automatic, like a script she'd read 1,000 times. I watched their hands as they moved, how quickly they folded into practiced cruelty. It occurred to me that the house had a rhythm, and everybody in it had learned how to dance to the same bad song. "You live with him?" I asked quietly. "For now," Sophia said, but her eyes hardened. He provides more pain than anything else," I said. The room chilled for a second. Sophia looked away. Margaret's face was flat as plaster. "You watch your mouth, love," Margaret warned. "You keep my household in order, you mind your place, and no one gets hurt more than they deserve." "No," I said. "Some things aren't deserved." Margaret laughed, but it had no joy. "And who will tell me that? You? You with hospital stories?" Her voice dipped, sharp with accusation. "You two always had drama. Do you want the police to come knocking because you cry loud?" I wanted to say a dozen things, that what they did was wrong, that bruises weren't sins, that a child did not deserve to learn to flinch when someone raised a hand. But I kept my voice low. "I'm here to keep things calm," I said. "To help." "Help?" She mimicked. "Then help by feeding everyone and not making trouble." I served the food. They ate with the loud, careless motions of people who believed hunger belonged only to the weak. The small boy shoved more chicken into his mouth and chewed like it owed him something. "Why do you look at me like that?" he asked, crumbs at the corner of his lips. "Because you're hurting her," I said. "Because it's not right." He glared as if I'd embarrassed him, and yet he didn't argue. He looked away quickly, ashamed at something he didn't yet understand. After dinner, I helped clear the plates. Margaret hovered, watching as if the way I held a dish might reveal some hidden rebellion. Sophia flicked the TV on and turned the volume up to drown the quiet. Ella curled on the couch with her doll, fingers worrying the seam. "You think you can change anything?" Margaret asked suddenly, as if she'd been waiting for the right moment to test me. "I think someone should try," I said. "Don't be foolish," she snapped. "We've had women like you coming through these doors. They make noise, they make promises, and then they go back to their cages." Her words landed heavy. For a moment I wanted to answer with all the rage I had stored for years, to tell her how wrong she was. Instead, I knelt down to Ella's level and smoothed a blanket over her. "Do you like cartoons?" I asked. "They scare me," she said. "They fight. Then we'll pick a quiet one." Sophia grabbed a bag of chips and watched me with a strange curiosity. "You ever think of leaving?" she asked, suddenly raw. "Leave where?" I said softly. "Where do people like her go?" I nodded to Ella. "You could go to your mother's," Sophia suggested, ashamed as soon as she said it. "Or family. People help." "Some families don't help," I said. "They hide things better." Sophia's eyes filled. She was someone who'd learned the language of small comforts, then had them taught away. She muttered something about work and left the room. Margaret followed, her cardigan a war flag. I sat with Ella. Her head rested against my shoulder, and for a while the world shrank to the size of her breath. I counted the slow rise and fall, measuring time in a way that had nothing to do with hospital clocks. "She's sleepy," I whispered. "Will you stay?" Ella asked. "Yes," I said. "I'll stay." I watched her fall asleep, the doll clutched tight. When her breathing evened, I rose and checked the door, latched, but not bolted. The house slept badly. I moved through the rooms with a careful, slow step, cataloging where they kept things, what noises the house made when it breathed. In the kitchen, I found a small pile of unpaid bills and a stack of letters. One of them was a notice from a betting company with numbers circled. Another was a note that looked like a receipt for a pawned watch. Under Margaret's purse, I found a mayor's magazine folded open to a page with a charity dinner. A photo of faces smiling beside platters of food they'd pretend to donate. "You keep secrets," I said to the empty room, because the house had become a character and I was learning its lines. On the back counter, under a tea towel, I found a small tin with keys. Car keys, a small padlock key, a house key with a faded tag. I slipped them into my pocket and felt the weight of possibilities. Then footsteps, a different gate, heavier, intending. The front door slammed. I froze. "Where are you?" A voice roared. It cracked like thunder. The man's footsteps thudded toward the hallway. He smelled of stale beer and regret. He was the kind of man who filled quiet rooms with his anger. "She's home," someone answered. Finally. I stood in the kitchen doorway, the keys heavy in my fist. For the first time since I had left the hospital, the blood in my face rose hot and steady. I felt the house tense, like an animal sensing a predator. I heard his boot hit the floor, then the key in the lock, then his voice, loud, slurred, claiming the space as his. "You here?" he called. "Lena, you in here?" I slid back into the shadow, watching him from the edge. He turned, and for a second he studied the room, and the woman on the couch, and the child who clutched a broken doll. He smiled like he owned something. "There you are," he said, satisfied. "You look tired." Ella's eyes opened. She hugged the doll tighter. He didn't know I wasn't who I seemed. He didn't know the future had just been picked up and shaken. I straightened, fingers curling around the keys. My heart thudded in my chest like a warning drum. Tonight, the house had been watched. Tomorrow, the rules would break. I stepped forward. "Why is it so quiet in here?" Ethan's voice rolled through the hallway before I even saw him. The heavy thud of his boots followed, and then he appeared, tall, broad, and humming with arrogance. "Dinner ready or what?" "It's on the table," Margaret snapped from the kitchen. "If it's cold, blame her." Her eyes darted toward me. I was standing by the counter, drying my hands on a towel. I smiled faintly, polite but unreadable. I didn't realize we were waiting for royalty. Sophia chuckled from her seat, stirring her wine with a finger. "Careful, Lena, he's not in the mood for jokes." The smell of burnt stew and vinegar filled the air. I took my place at the far end of the table beside Ella. She sat small and silent, tracing a line of peas with her spoon. Ethan dropped into his chair, his elbow hitting the table with a heavy thud. "Where's the salt?" "You've got enough in your mouth already," I said quietly. He looked up, eyes narrowing. "What was that?" "Nothing," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I'll get it?" Margaret snorted. "That tongue of yours will get you in trouble, girl." Sophia grinned. "It already has." The room filled with forced laughter, cold, mean laughter that had no joy in it. I studied each of them carefully. Every sneer, every eye roll, every twitch of control. They fed off cruelty like oxygen. I sat down again. Ethan chewed noisily, staring straight at me. "So you planning to act weird all night or just until dessert?" "I'm not acting." He barked out a humorless laugh. Could have fooled me. "Usually, you're quiet, obedient." I met his eyes. People change. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Since when? Yesterday?" "Since I got tired," I said. Margaret slammed her fork down. "Tired? Of what, feeding your child? Cooking for a man who works himself to death to keep this roof over your head?" Ethan smirked. "Yeah, you should be grateful. You'd be nothing without me." I took a slow breath, steadying the pulse in my neck. I couldn't explode yet. I needed to see the shape of their cruelty. "You're right," I said softly. "I'd be nothing if I believed you." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. Then Sophia's laugh broke it again, mocking, high-pitched, desperate to restore control. "She's got a new attitude. How cute." Ethan slammed his glass down. "Cut the act. What's with this look? You think you're better than us now?" I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Do you really want me to answer that?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then Margaret hissed, "Mind your manners, girl." "You're in my house." "No," I said evenly. "I'm in the house you built on fear." Her face drained of color. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." She pushed her chair back, rising halfway. "Watch yourself." "I am." The air was thick with tension. I could see Ella trembling at the corner of my eye, trying to make herself smaller. That was when Mason, Sophia's spoiled son, decided to break the silence. He picked up a handful of mashed potatoes and flung it across the table. It hit Ella's dress and splattered across her tiny arm. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. Ella froze. Her lip quivered, but she didn't cry. She'd learned not to. "Apologize to your cousin," I said quietly. Mason giggled. "Why? She's fine." "Apologize." Sophia waved a hand. "Oh, relax. Kids play." I reached across the table and caught his wrist midair before he could grab another handful. The movement was instinctive, precise, too fast for any of them to react. His small wrist fit inside my palm like a fragile stick. His eyes widened. "Apologize," I said again. My voice was calm, but my hand didn't move. Sophia's smile vanished. Let him go. He threw food at her. He's a child, she snapped. And she's a child too. The words came out colder than I intended. Mason's wrist twitched under my grip, and for a second I saw fear, the same kind I'd seen in Lena's eyes that day at the hospital. Say it, I whispered. I'm sorry, he muttered, louder. I'm sorry. I released his wrist. He jerked his hand back, rubbing it, eyes wide and wet. The room was dead silent. Ethan stared at me like he'd just seen a stranger. What the hell was that? Respect, I said. You should try it sometime. Sophia stood, her chair screeching. Don't talk to my son like that. I met her fury head on. Then teach him not to act like his father. Her face went white. What did you just say? I turned my attention to the table, picking up a piece of bread as if nothing had happened. Dinner's getting cold. Ethan slammed his fist against the table, rattling the cutlery. You've got some nerve tonight. I looked at him, unflinching. I've had time to think. About what? About what happens when people stop being afraid. Margaret leaned forward, eyes like daggers. You think you scare us? You forget who feeds you, who pays for this house, who... I don't forget anything, I said, cutting her off. I remember everything. Sophia's voice trembled with anger. You've lost it. No, I said quietly. I've found it. Ethan pointed his fork at me. Keep talking like that and you'll regret it. I already do. He rose halfway, the threat hanging heavy in the air. But then something shifted. The smallest hesitation, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. I wasn't the same woman he'd broken down for years. The silence stretched, deep and thick. Ella whispered something so soft I almost didn't hear it. Mommy? I turned to her and smiled. It's okay, sweetheart. You can eat now. She nodded, still shaking. Margaret broke the silence with a bitter laugh. You're trying to play tough, but we both know how this ends. You'll come crawling back, begging forgiveness. Forgiveness? I repeated, smiling faintly. That's not a word I use for people like you. Sophia muttered something under her breath. Ethan glared at her, then at me. His hand twitched, wanting to grab, to hit, to remind himself he still had power. But he didn't move. None of them did. For the first time in that house, silence held the power, not fear. Inside, I felt the stillness settle, heavy and final. The kind of silence that says something's changed and can't be undone. Dinner continued in awkward stabs of noise, forks scraping, glasses clinking, muttered curses. I barely heard them. My eyes stayed on Ella, who was finally taking small bites again, her shoulders less tense. They didn't realize it yet, but something irreversible had begun. Their victim, the one they'd mocked, controlled, beaten into quiet, was gone. I wasn't her anymore, and before the night was over, they'd understand exactly what kind of woman had taken her place. The sun hadn't even risen before Margaret's voice cut through the walls like a blade. Up! Floors don't clean themselves! I opened my eyes to the gray light spilling through the curtains. My hands ached from scrubbing the kitchen last night, but I didn't move slowly. Not yet. I needed them to believe I was the same obedient woman they'd broken down over the years. By the time I stepped into the hallway, Margaret was already waiting with her arms crossed. You slept in, she said. It's 6:30, I answered. 6 o'clock is when decent people start. I didn't argue. I just picked up the mop and bucket, lowering my gaze like a servant who'd given up. She wanted that posture, small, defeated. But inside I was counting her movements. Every word she spoke, every corner of the house she guarded like a dragon hoarding dust and cruelty. As I filled the bucket, she added, Don't forget the baseboards this time. You skipped them yesterday. I remember, I said quietly. Don't talk back. I dipped the mop into the water and started on the hallway tiles. She stood behind me, watching like she was waiting for a mistake. When she finally left, muttering about ungrateful women, I exhaled slowly. I wasn't scrubbing, I was studying. I noticed the loose floorboard behind the hallway rug where Ethan liked to drop his jacket after work. I'd heard the faint thump of metal there before. A hiding spot. Gambling cash, maybe. He always smelled like whiskey and debt. In the living room, the side cabinet had a lock that wasn't attached properly. Margaret's jewelry, no doubt. The kind she'd accuse me of stealing if she ever needed an excuse to yell. And near the stairs, where Ella's toys were scattered, I saw it. Faint bruises on her upper arm. Fresh. She hid them the moment she noticed me looking. I crouched beside her. Sweetheart, did you fall? She froze, eyes darting toward the kitchen. I don't remember. Did someone... Grandma says accidents happen, she whispered. My heart twisted. Yeah, I murmured. They do. But not all of them are accidents. Footsteps echoed behind us, Sophia chewing gum, holding a stack of clothes. You done staring at her? I've got a job for you. I stood jaw tight. What now? Laundry, ironing, all of it. I'm meeting someone tonight, and I want my blouse perfect. Use the iron yourself. She blinked, then smiled, thin and sharp. Excuse me? You heard me. She laughed. Look at you growing a spine. Don't forget who feeds you, Lena. I met her gaze without flinching. That's funny. I don't see you feeding anyone. Her face stiffened. You better watch that tone. Maybe you should try watching your own. She stared at me for a long moment, confused, almost nervous, before turning away. You're acting strange, she said, forcing a smirk. Whatever, just don't mess up my clothes. When she left, I felt something shift in the air, small but certain. I wasn't playing their roles anymore. By evening, the house had changed again. The air smelled of burnt stew and cheap perfume. Margaret clattered dishes in the kitchen while muttering about how women today have no respect. Sophia was on the phone, laughing too loud, and Ella was sitting quietly in the corner, building something out of blocks, a small wall, piece by piece. I joined her on the floor. What are you making? A fort, she whispered. For who? For you. That word you hit me like a small bright knife. I smiled. Then let's make it strong. We built in silence until I heard the familiar slam of the front door. Ethan was home. The sound of his boots on the tiles used to make Lena freeze. I could feel her fear still haunting the air like smoke from a long-dead fire. But I wasn't her. Not anymore. He stumbled in, his shirt half unbuttoned, reeking of liquor and sweat. Where's my dinner? He barked. Margaret shouted from the kitchen. Ask your wife. She's been sitting around all day pretending to be busy. He turned to me, a cruel smirk on his face. That true, sweetheart? You slacking again? I stood steady. Dinner's on the stove. Did I say I wanted stove food? You'll eat what's there. He laughed, loud and bitter. You talking to me like that now? Yes, I said simply. He took a step closer. You forget your place? No, I said. I finally remembered it. His smile faltered. You're drunk? No. Then you're crazy. Maybe, I said. But not as crazy as a man who thinks he can scare me anymore. Sophia appeared from the hallway, eyes wide. What's going on? Nothing, Ethan said, his tone darkening. My wife's being smart with me. Sophia chuckled nervously. You should stop talking, Lena. I ignored her. You're not yelling at me tonight, Ethan. He took another step, voice low. Or what? I met his eyes. Or you'll find out how it feels. He laughed again, but it sounded less sure this time. You threatening me? I'm warning you. He leaned closer, the smell of whiskey hitting my nose. You think you can scare me, woman? I didn't move. No, but I can stop you. Margaret stormed in from the kitchen. What's all this shouting? Your daughter's lost her damn mind, Ethan snapped. Watch your mouth, I said softly. Margaret blinked, stunned. Excuse me? You heard me, I said. No more shouting in front of the child. No more slamming doors. No more pretending this is normal. Sophia scoffed. You sound like one of those self-help women. Maybe they have the right idea, I said. Ethan's laugh came out harsh. You think this house runs on your rules? Not anymore, I said. He moved closer, chest puffed like he owned the air between us. You're asking for it. Then I'm asking, I said. For a moment, everything stopped. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, even Margaret's muttering. The house seemed to hold its breath. Then he blinked and stepped back. You've really gone off the rails, he said, shaking his head. Fine, I'm not wasting energy on this. He turned, stumbling toward the stairs. But I saw the flicker of confusion on his face, the way he hesitated before climbing, like he wasn't sure who I was anymore. When the footsteps faded, Sophia whispered, What's happening to you? Nothing, I said. Something's happening to you all. She frowned. You're not scaring me. Good, I said. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to wake you up. Margaret scoffed. Wake us up? You sound insane. Maybe, I said, picking up a dish towel. But insane people don't usually clean your messes and protect your granddaughter at the same time. Her jaw tightened. Don't you dare talk about Ella. I'll talk about her all I want, I said. Because she deserves better than this house, this noise, and this family that treats kindness like weakness. Sophia crossed her arms. You're starting fights you can't win. I smiled faintly. I don't start fights. I finish them. That night, when the house finally went quiet, I walked through the darkened hallway. The floors creaked softly beneath my feet. I checked the locks, peeked into Ella's room, and watched her sleep, small, peaceful, unaware that a storm was already turning in her home. I could feel it, the shift. They didn't laugh as loudly anymore. Their insults didn't land the same way. For years, they'd built their power on silence. But silence was gone now. The next morning, when Margaret barked orders again, I didn't flinch. When Sophia sneered, I didn't react. When Ethan glared, I stared back until he looked away. They were confused, uneasy. They didn't know it yet, but fear had changed sides. Every task, every insult, every glare, I was cataloging it all. Their routines, their secrets, their weaknesses. I wasn't here to survive anymore. I was here to end the pattern, the bruises, the fear, the endless cycle of pretending everything was fine. And soon, they'd see what that really meant. Because the next time Ethan raised his voice, he wouldn't meet the woman he thought he owned. He'd meet the one who'd been watching, waiting, and planning. The one he could never break again. The door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. You think you can talk back now? His voice was a growl, thick with alcohol, heavy with something darker. I didn't move. I stood in the middle of the living room, hands steady, heart like thunder. He stumbled toward me, the smell of beer and sweat rolling off him. Answer me when I'm talking to you. You're drunk, I said quietly. Go to bed. His laugh was sharp, cruel. Oh, that's cute. You give orders now? I'm not giving orders, I said. I'm giving you a chance to stop. He smirked, the kind of smirk that used to make Lena shrink. You think a few words can scare me? I'm not trying to scare you. Then what the hell are you doing? I held his stare, showing you that I'm not her anymore. For a second, confusion flickered in his eyes. Then rage took over. He lunged, arm outstretched, but this time I didn't flinch. I caught his wrist midair. My grip was firm, not violent but unshakable. He froze, stunned. What the— Don't, I said. Let go of me. You've said that before, I whispered. But you never meant it. He tried to pull free. I didn't tighten my hold. I just held steady, watching the panic bloom where arrogance used to live. What are you doing? His voice broke, disbelief dripping through the anger. Stopping you. Are you crazy? No, I said softly. I'm awake. He yanked harder, but I didn't move. The tension in his arm trembled. He tried to twist away, but it didn't work. For the first time in his life, his strength meant nothing here. You don't want to do this, he hissed. You've said that to her, haven't you? I said. You've used that line to make her small. He stopped struggling. His eyes searched mine, confused, like he was seeing someone else wearing his wife's face. What's wrong with you? Nothing, I said. What's wrong is that you thought fear was love. He jerked his arm again, desperate now. Let go. Not until you understand. Understand what? That it's over. I released his wrist suddenly, and he stumbled back, catching himself against the edge of the table. His breath came fast, uneven. What's gotten into you? Strength, I said. The kind you can't beat out of someone. He blinked, face twisted between anger and uncertainty. You're out of your mind. I took a step closer. Maybe, but you're out of control, and that's worse. He pointed at me, shaking. You think you're tough now? You think standing up one time changes anything? It changes everything, I said. Because you're never touching me again. He laughed, but it was hollow. You'll regret this. I've already lived my regrets. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. He looked at me like he was trying to find the woman he once controlled, the one who would apologize, cry, beg. But she was gone. His jaw clenched. You're not the same. No, I said. I'm not. He backed up, shaking his head. You don't know what you're doing. I do. What if I don't leave? Then you'll find out what happens when someone stops being afraid. His face went red. You think you can threaten me? I don't need to. I turned my back to him and picked up the glass he'd knocked over earlier, setting it on the counter. The sound of water dripping from its edge was louder than his breath. Behind me, I heard his footsteps shift, One step forward, one step back. The rhythm of a man who didn't know which instinct to follow, fight or flee. When I turned around, he wasn't smirking anymore. "You really think I'm scared of you?" he said finally. "No," I said. "You're scared of yourself." He flinched. "You've built your power on fear," I continued. "But what happens when no one's afraid of you?" His silence was my answer. "You don't know how to exist without someone smaller beside you," I said. "That's why you pick women like her. Like me, but not anymore." His voice cracked. "You're talking like a stranger." "Good," I said. "That means it's working." He stared at me for a long time, breathing hard, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Then he muttered something under his breath and stumbled toward the hallway. "You'll regret this," he said again, but it sounded weaker now, almost like he was trying to convince himself. The door slammed behind him as he went upstairs. For a moment I didn't move. My hand still tingled from where I'd held his wrist. My body trembled, not from fear but from release. 10 years of helplessness uncoiled inside me, like chains slipping off one link at a time. I looked around the room. The chair he'd kicked last week still leaned crooked against the wall. The rug was torn near the corner where Ella had tripped. Everything carried a memory of pain. But for the first time, those memories felt like ghosts, fading with each breath. I sat down on the couch, breathing slowly. My reflection in the window looked almost peaceful, calm in a way Lena had probably never felt in her own home. Then I heard a soft sound behind me. "Mommy?" Ella stood in the doorway, her eyes wide and shining. I forced a gentle smile. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's fine." "Did Daddy get mad again?" "No," I said softly. "Not this time." "Why not?" "Because he finally learned what no means." She tilted her head, confused. "You made him stop?" "Yes." She came closer, her small hands clutching the edge of my shirt. "Are you going to cry now?" I brushed a hand over her hair. "No, not anymore." Her lips trembled, and then she whispered, "Can I stay here with you tonight?" "Of course," I said. She curled up beside me, head resting on my lap. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. I stared down at her and felt something rise inside me. Something steady, protective, and fierce. For the first time in years, the house wasn't holding its breath. There was no shouting, no footsteps chasing down the hallway, no slammed doors. Just silence. But it wasn't the old kind of silence, the fearful kind. This was different. This was the kind that fills a space after a storm, when the air is clean and sharp, and the world feels like it might forgive you for surviving. I looked toward the staircase where Ethan had disappeared. He wouldn't sleep easily tonight. I knew that. Fear had finally changed direction. And as I sat there in the quiet, with Ella's small hand wrapped around my sleeve, I realized something else. The silence didn't just belong to me. It belonged to her too. To the woman who'd been bruised, the girl who'd been ignored, the child who'd learned to flinch. To all of us who had ever whispered enough. That night, for the first time in that cursed house, silence didn't mean defeat. It meant victory. And it was only the beginning. "You left the salt out again." "That's on the stove." "You can't even follow a simple instruction." I kept my voice level, like I'd practiced, while my hands wrapped the bread tighter. I'd learned early that volume fed their cruelty. Quiet made them lean in and show their teeth. "You okay, Lena?" "I'm fine." "You sound thin." "Is that a complaint?" Margaret's tone was a knife wrapped in wool. She moved through the kitchen like she owned each tile. Her cardigan was buttoned too high for the heat, like armor. Sophia watched me with that bored, testing look, flipping through a magazine as if boredom could prove power. Mason kicked a toy under the table and laughed at the noise. "Pass the gravy," Ethan said, not looking at me. "You passed it to him." "You passed it past me." "That makes no sense." "Figure it out." I slid the dish toward him with 2 fingers. He grabbed it, nodding like a general pleased with his troops. Ella ate slowly, eyes on the plate, hands fidgeting with the rim. I watched the way she held her spoon, guarded as if someone might take it away. "You're cooking for a man with no manners," Margaret said. "He provides," Sophia replied. "He provides nothing but excuses," I said. The words left my mouth before I decided to keep them. Silence snapped at the table like a rope. "Mind your tongue," Ethan warned, jaw tight. "I will mind it when he learns how to hold a fork without throwing it like a weapon." "You want trouble," Sophia said, tone sharp. "You really want that?" Only the trouble that wakes people up, I answered. They laughed like it was clever. I pretended to laugh too, the sound hollow and measured. The plan wasn't to start a riot. It was to change the rhythm of this house until their control slipped. Small moves, invisible breaks. You always look like you've got a plan, Margaret sneered. Maybe I do. Stop pretending. Pretending's what saved you all this time. She pushed her chair back and left the table with exaggerated grace. The front door slammed behind her. For anyone else, dinner would have been over. For me, it was the beginning. I started with seasoning. Salt the stew until it made their mouths retreat. Too much made them cough, made the meal humiliating. It sounds petty, but humiliation eats pride. Pride is thin, it cracks. I watched Ethan's face redden as he tried to swallow. He swallowed more slowly the next night. The night after, he didn't pick at his plate at all. You put something wrong, Sophia said, voice small, offended. You always say that, I said. People don't like being made fools of. Some people need a lesson in manners. She flinched like she'd been struck. That was the quiet war beginning, each tweak a tiny fracture in the wall they'd built. When they slept, I moved through the house like a shadow with purpose. Margaret's medication sat in a small box behind the sewing basket. She took it every morning like a secret candle. I swapped the pills for harmless vitamins. She crowed about tired knees the next day, louder and more irritable. Without the sleep mud that drugs sometimes bring, she fumbled, misremembered events, lost her sharp edges for hours. The household noticed confusion where there'd been certainty. Where did I put my glasses? She asked at breakfast, hands fluttering. Maybe you left them at the charity dinner, Sophia said, voice tight. They were on the nightstand, she muttered, searching. You okay, Margaret? I asked softly. I'm fine. Let me help. Her pride resisted, but the little slip was there. She snapped at a different target. The vacuum cleaner, the cat, the calendar, small explosions that made her look human and less dangerous. When she scolded me later, her words hit with less force. A bruise in her authority had taken form. Sophia's schedule had small windows of vulnerability. She left her door unlocked sometimes, hands full, worrying about a manicure or a text. I made sure to lock her out whenever rain threatened. Standing on the porch with a towel, offering sympathy, I'd watch her temper fray. Her anger shuffled from me to the sky, to the wet shoes, to an umbrella she'd forgotten. You're ridiculous, she'd snap. I'm just trying to help. Help? You're being vindictive. Call it motivated cleanliness. She stomped back inside, damp and furious, flipping her hair like a shield. The next morning she came down paler, skirt wonky, cursing under her breath. Her insults took on an edge of exhaustion. I catalogued the moments when they lost composure. I kept a map in my head of the house's weak places. And you call this cruel, Margaret said one afternoon, holding a hand to her chest. Cruel to stop you from being cruel? I replied, you don't understand me at all. Maybe you don't let people. The ironies were small and constant. I scrubbed dishes at midnight after a staged spill, and in the pockets of a coat, I found a stack of betting slips. I folded shirts and discovered receipts from late-night bars. They had habits, and habits had predictability. Predictability is a map, and maps can be used. You're always poking around, Sophia accused when she found me sorting through laundry. I'm looking for things that belong to the house, I said. Not to you. Don't be clever. Cleverness is cheap, I said. Consistency is expensive. She slammed the door, and I smiled at the small victory of a slammed door that meant she'd lost temper, not control. Careful sabotage isn't loud. It's the art of misplacing confidence. Replace someone's certainty with tiny, repeatable annoyances, and they eventually change behavior to avoid the sting. A man who liked his power steady would try to reassert it. A woman taught to bow would test the bow less often. The house's equilibrium had always favored the loudest voice. I intended to shift the balance. One evening, I swapped the labels on 2 pill bottles. The switch was a game in which the rules favored me. Margaret took a vitamin and felt lighter, then furious when she realized the taste of her tea had changed. She accused the pantry, then me. The accusation burned less when it was misdirected. She scolded herself instead of me. Confusion is a subtle blade. You did this on purpose, she accused, looking for impact. I organized, I said. Maybe I forgot the labels. You always do something. Not always. She glared and stormed off, forgetting to lock the back door. That mistake would be useful later. The small victories piled. A missed phone call from a loan shark. A gambling debt notice stuffed under a magazine I left obvious. An embarrassed argument about money in front of a neighbor who'd never seen Ethan hush so quickly. Each act was surgical. I didn't humiliate them in front of the child. My war had rules. Protect the small, unnerve the predators, avoid the law unless it became necessary. You're playing a dangerous game, Sophia warned one night. It's the kind of game that ends bad for abusers, I said. You don't understand the consequences. I understand the consequences more than you think. She left the room, hands trembling. The tremor was new. They were learning the language of unpredictability. It wasn't always subtle. I'd let a pot boil over once, not by accident. The smoke alarm shrieked. Margaret poured water on the stove in a panic. Ethan banged the door and cursed the air. For a family so used to control, a noise like that rattled them deeper than a word. We ate in silence that night, the plates heavy with flavor they couldn't stomach. I watched them swallow, watched their eyes avoid mine. You do this for show, Margaret said. You want a reaction. I want to change, I said. Change doesn't come from making people uncomfortable. Sometimes it does when comfort is what caused harm. I gave Ella extra fruit when the adult plates were sparse. I'd find small treats and tuck them in a drawer where only she would find them. She learned to open the fridge without flinching when she saw something for herself. Her smile returned in fractions. A curve after tasting yogurt, a giggle at a hidden coin. Those were the true victories. You're being cruel to be kind, Sophia accused, trying to make sense of the twisted logic. I'm being strategic, I corrected. There's a difference. What's the end? She asked, voice exhausted. Fear shifts power, I said. And fear can be trained. Their looks began to change. Where once they met my gaze with certainty, they now offered quick glances and then distraction. Ethan's hand twitched by the table sometimes, a ghost of habit. He checked his phone more often, looking for messages from strangers who might bail him out. Once I found a pack of smudged cash pressed behind the molding at the baseboard. I left a small note tucked there. You can change or not. Your choice. He didn't find the note until a week later. When he did, he read it slowly, like a man examining a wound. You left this? He demanded later, voice rough. I thought you should know someone's watching. Watching? I'm watching. He made a show of laughter and went to bed early that night, claiming work. He didn't go to work the next morning. He sat on the porch, staring at the street like a man waiting for judgment. Margaret fussed, giving him tea and complaining about aches. Sophia avoided the kitchen at times. Mason started to pick on other kids at school, less at home. A displacement of anger I welcomed. They called me cruel. They said I was petty, dangerous, unstable. Some nights their words landed like knives. Some nights they bounced off. The important thing was the way their confidence thinned, the subtle change in how they planned their day. They double-checked locks they'd once thrown open. They spoke less loudly when guests stopped by. A neighbor commented once that the house seemed quieter, and Margaret scolded the neighbor for noticing. You're making me paranoid, she said to me once, slammed a drawer shut as if to hide a small object. Good, I said. Paranoia keeps people honest. But I knew this quiet war wouldn't be won with salt and swapped pills alone. Pride runs deep, and men like Ethan feed on pride. If you bruise it, they strike back. I expected it, planned for it. I sharpened my patience. I mapped exits, tuned doors, kept keys where my fingers could find them in the dark. One night I found Ethan drinking on the couch, hands wrapped around a cheap bottle. He didn't bother to hide the anger. He muttered to himself, then stood and paced. He glanced at the stairs as if weighing a storm. I didn't flinch. I poured myself tea and sat at the table, letting him warm the room with his own temper. You think you've won? He asked, voice low. No, I said. I think we've started to even the score. Even the score? He repeated, incredulous. You don't know what you're doing. I do, I said. I know enough. He laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. Or maybe you'll finally remember how to be decent. He slammed his fist on the table, the cutlery jumping, and then he walked out into the night. The door banged behind him. I watched the streetlights smear the porch in weak gold. My chest thrummed with a steady calm. I had taught a family to doubt themselves, and doubt can topple the most confident tyrant. Still, I recognized the shape of a final retaliation forming in his stride. Pride has a way of becoming a weapon when bruised. I checked the locks, counted the keys, and sat by Ella as she slept. Her small hand curled on mine, and I felt the fierce, bright thing people call love sharpen into a plan. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I'd be ready. Because when he decides to strike back, he'll find that the woman he thought he controlled was the one waiting for him. The sky broke open like someone had ripped a curtain. "You're home early," I said before I could stop myself. "You think home belongs to you?" He spat, dropping his keys on the table like an accusation. "Tell me, do you always come in like you own someone?" He stopped, chest heaving, eyes hard. "Who are you?" "I'm the wife who's tired of being invisible." He laughed then, a short, bitter sound. "You think this is funny?" "No." "You've changed," he said, circling me like a predator testing. "You're different." "I had 10 years to get ready," I answered. "You had 10 years to grow soft," he shot back. "That's the problem. Soft didn't protect my sister." He lunged before the sentence finished. Instinct took over, not mine alone, but every careful, counted movement I'd practiced in the hospital. My hands went to his wrist before he could close his fist. "Let go of me!" he snarled, wrenching and cursing. "Not tonight," I said, and my voice was small and steady, the kind that doesn't tremble when it means it. He tried to twist free. I kept my grip and pulled him off balance, using his own momentum. He stumbled, grabbed the back of a chair. The room blurred with motion. A chair scraped, a lamp wavered, and then he hit the floor with a sound that made the whole house flinch. He lay there, stunned, chest rising and falling like a bellows. "You hit me," he gasped, disbelief clawing through the liquor in his veins. "I didn't," I said. "You fell?" "I'll call the police," he blurted, pushing himself up. "You'll be sorry." "Call them," I said. "Tell them what you do in the dark." He laughed, but it was a hollow thing. "You're playing with fire." "I'm putting it out." He tried to rise, hands fumbling at the carpet, and when he looked at me, his face was a mixture of shame and fury. For the first time, I saw him not as a beast, but as a man who'd been surprised by his own cowardice. He put his hand to his arm where it had struck the floor and hissed. "What did you do to me?" "You taught yourself what happened when someone stops being small," I said. "You taught yourself you can be hurt by consequences." He lurched toward the stairs and I followed, quiet, every step deliberate. "You're not the same woman who listened," he said over his shoulder. "You're dangerous." "I'm not dangerous to the ones who matter," I replied. "I'm dangerous to the ones who hurt them." He paused at the top of the stairs, one hand on the banister. "You'll regret this," he said, a tremor in his voice that made the threat sound like a plea. "I already lived regret," I said. "This is repayment." He slammed his bedroom door and the house sighed. For a second I thought it was over. Then the slam was followed by scrambling and rustling. He was looking for something, maybe a weapon. My chest tightened. I imagined the worst and then forced my hands to steady. I moved to the kitchen, opened the cabinet where they kept the phone. I dialed 911 like a person speaking clearly into a script. "There's been an incident of domestic abuse," I told the operator, keeping my voice even, almost clinical. "We need officers at 42 Ashford Lane right now. The aggressor is still inside." I gave my name, my voice steady, then hung up and set the receiver back with hands that trembled only a little. "You called?" He shouted from behind the door. "I called," I answered. "You should have thought about that before you thought you could break us." The minutes stretched thin as wire. I sat at the table with my hands folded and listened to the house breathe, radiator ticking, rain on the window, Ella's small footsteps padding down the hall. She peeked around the corner, eyes huge. "Is Daddy mad?" she whispered. "He's upstairs," I said softly. "He'll calm down." "He always scares me," she said. "Will he leave?" "Yes," I told her. "He'll have to." I watched her go back to the couch and pull her blanket up. Her small, trusting face made something in me sharpen. This was no longer about revenge for Lena. It was about a safe, small person who deserved to grow without flinching. The house creaked as if it were trying to make a decision. Footsteps pounded again. The bedroom door burst open, and he came out disheveled, eyes wild but sober. He carried a bottle like a talisman, and the look on his face was raw. "You called the police," he said, more statement than question. "Yes." "You—" he started, then stopped, as if words failed him. He steadied against the stair rail and breathed hard. "You'll ruin us," he whispered. "You'll ruin everything." "If keeping a child safe is ruin, then ruin us," I said. I don't want anything from you except you to stop. He laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Stop? No? You think one night will change me? Maybe not, I said. But it changed you tonight. His shoulders shook, and for the first time he looked very small. He staggered forward, and I thought he'd strike, but instead he fell to his knees and clutched at his face. The anger drained into something else, terror maybe. Please, he said, and the word came out raw and useless. Please, I didn't mean— No more please, I said. You used pleading like a shield. He looked at me, and for a second I saw the man behind the monster. Regret flickered, but it didn't have enough weight to drown the years of harm. He tried to stand and his legs wavered. You'll pay for this, he muttered. They'll believe me. Call them, I said again. Tell the truth this time. He stared at me like he was trying to remember how to lie. Then the house keys jingled and muffled voices rose outside. A patrol car, 2 officers under a rain-smeared streetlight. A uniform knock sounded like a verdict. You called? One of them asked as they stepped inside, jackets wet. Yes, I said. My voice was steady in a way that surprised me. He assaulted me and my niece. The officers glanced at the living room, at the one crooked chair, at the overturned lamp, then at Ethan, pale, disheveled, hands trembling. Sir, we need to hear your side. He tried to answer, mouth opening and closing. He started. You assaulted this woman, I said, meeting his eyes. You put your hands on a child. You've been doing it for years. One of the officers raised an eyebrow. Do you have any evidence? She has medical reports and photos, I said, glancing at the envelope Lena had tucked into my coat months ago. She's been collecting them. Broken ribs, bruises, reports from doctors. I can show you. He laughed nervously. Why would she have those? He asked, voice thin. Because she couldn't go to the police. Because you were convincing in public and abusive in private, I said. Because I can't let this go on. The older officer looked at me for a long beat. Do you have a name? He asked Ethan. We need a statement. Ethan's face flushed. She attacked me, he said quickly, trying the script of self-defense. I came home, and you tried to hit her, I finished. You attacked us. They looked at the child sitting on the couch. Ella's small face peeked over the blanket. The younger officer crouched to her level and asked softly, Are you okay, sweetheart? She nodded, eyes wide. He was yelling. The older officer sighed, then looked back at Ethan. Sir, we're going to take your statement at the station, but right now we need to see if anyone needs medical attention. He stepped forward and gently guided Ethan to sit. The man's hands trembled so badly that he could barely hold a cup. The officer took notes, a slow, precise machine watching a long dance. I watched every movement, cataloging it. The way the officers checked for visible injuries, the way they asked direct questions, the way they didn't assume guilt or innocence, but wrote down facts. One officer asked me to come with him to point out the places where things had happened. I led them through the rooms, the kitchen with its salt-stained pots, the couch where Ella slept, the bedroom door that had been slammed. I handed over the folder with the reports Lena had given me, and the officer's expression changed as he flipped through pages. Photos, dates, a pattern. He looked at Ethan and then back at me. This is serious, he said quietly. We'll document everything. Ethan tried to stand, voice thin. You set this up, he accused, panic now dripping into the edges. You tricked them. You set the example for how to terrorize a household, I said. I'm not tricking anyone. I called them because someone needs to listen. They let him out in handcuffs, but not before he turned toward me. His face was empty. You'll regret this, he mouthed, the words a ghost as the door closed. I stood on the porch watching the patrol car pull away, rain washing the windows. Ella clung to my hand, small and solid. She looked up at me and breathed, Are we safe? Yes, I said, though I didn't know the truth of it yet. For now. Inside, the house held a new kind of quiet, the kind that isn't fear but possibility. I felt both relief and an ache, like the hollow after a tooth is pulled. The lesson had been given, but the work was only beginning. I walked back into the living room and sat down on the couch. Papers from the folder rustled in my lap. I thought of Lena's fragile smile, of the way she'd begged me not to ruin everything, and I felt both vindication and sorrow. I had stepped out of a life that had been safe by rules and into a mess that might ruin us all. I had done it deliberately. The phone in the kitchen rang. a number I didn't recognize. I picked it up with a hand that didn't shake. "Detective Harris," a voice said on the other end. "We have some questions. Can you come down to the station?" I took a breath and said, "Yes." When I hung up, Ella's head lolled against my shoulder. I looked out at the rain and realized the truth. The night had changed more than him. It has changed me, and as the house settled into a brittle quiet, I understood that becoming the one who fought meant living with the consequences. Legal questions, family fallout, things I'd promised Lena we'd avoid. I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But as the patrol car's taillights disappeared into the wet dark, I felt the smallest kind of rightness settle in my chest. I'd stopped the cycle for one night. That was enough to start. Outside, thunder rolled like a closing verdict. Inside, I waited for the phone to ring again. The interrogation room smelled faintly of coffee and cold metal. The overhead light flickered once before steadying, throwing thin shadows across the table. Detective Harris slid a folder toward me. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes." He studied my face for a moment before opening the file. "You've been documenting this all along?" I nodded. "She did. I just finished what she started." He raised an eyebrow. "Your sister?" "Yes, Lena. Everything's here. Photos, medical reports, doctor notes, dates, names. She kept it hidden for years. She was terrified of what would happen if he found out." He flipped through the pages, silent. The sound of the paper was louder than breathing. Most women don't have this kind of evidence. "She wasn't like most women," I said softly. "She survived in silence because she thought no one would believe her. I guess I'm the echo she left behind." His eyes softened, but his tone stayed professional. "You realize if this goes to court, the details in here will be made public?" "I understand." "Some of this is hard to read," he admitted. Broken ribs, a hospital visit labeled as a fall down the stairs. "It was never stairs," I said. It was him. He closed the folder gently, like it might shatter. "He's still in holding. We'll book him tonight." "Good." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You didn't hesitate calling 911, did you?" "No," I said. "Not this time." He gave a faint smile. "Most don't get to say that twice." The silence stretched again, broken only by the hum of the lights. Then he stood. "I'm going to send someone in to take official statements. After that, you'll sign, and we'll begin processing charges." I nodded. He started for the door, then paused. "You said you're speaking for her," he said quietly. "Where is she now?" My throat tightened. "Safe," I answered. "And she's finally sleeping without checking the door." He didn't press further. That's good enough for me. He stepped out, and for the first time in hours, I let myself exhale. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the sudden stillness. I'd lived 10 years inside walls built to keep me in, and now I was watching another kind of prison open. Ethan's, Margaret's, Sophia's, the ones they'd built for themselves out of lies. The officer returned with a notepad. "You said he attacked you first?" "Yes. Can you describe how?" He came toward me. He reached for my arm. I stopped him. "Did you use any weapon?" "No," I said. "Just the truth." He scribbled a note, then asked, "And the child, Ella, did she witness the altercation?" "She heard it. She saw him fall. She's safe now." He nodded, then glanced up at me. "You seem calm." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just practiced at pretending." When he left, I was alone again. The glass panel on the wall reflected my face faintly. I looked like Lena, same eyes, same mouth. But the expression staring back wasn't hers anymore. It hit me then, all the months of pretending to be her, all the fear I'd borrowed and the strength I'd had to build. I'd crossed the line between revenge and justice, and the air on this side was heavier but clearer. The door opened, and Detective Harris returned, holding another file. We questioned his mother and sister. I raised an eyebrow. "And?" "They weren't consistent," he said. The mother claimed he never laid a hand on anyone, but the sister contradicted her 3 minutes later. Then they both blamed each other for hiding the truth. "That sounds about right." He smiled faintly. "You've seen this before." "I've lived it," I said. "They said you provoked him." I laughed softly. "That's the song of every abuser's choir." He closed the file. "Their statements aren't strong enough to protect him. The evidence your sister collected, plus the police report from tonight, will hold. So it's done?" He hesitated. "It's a start. These things take time, but he'll be held without bail for now." I nodded. The room suddenly felt lighter, as if someone had cracked a window. "Do you want protection?" he asked. "Just in case?" "I've spent a decade behind locked doors," I said quietly. "I'll take the open air." He almost smiled. "Fair enough. We'll escort you home." Home. The word didn't mean much anymore. That house wasn't home. It was a battlefield dressed in wallpaper. But Lena's apartment, the one near the hospital, that was different. It was quiet, clean, filled with soft things she'd chosen herself. I needed to hear her voice. Back in the hallway, the air smelled of rain and metal. I pulled out my phone and dialed the hospital. "St. Mary's Psychiatric," the nurse answered. "This is—" "Maya," I said, using the name Lena had registered under when she took my place. "Can you tell me how the patient under my name is doing?" "One moment." The hold music buzzed faintly before the nurse returned. "Maya's been calm and cooperative," she said. "No incidents. She's quiet, though. Keeps asking for her sister." My chest ached. "Tell her she doesn't have to be afraid anymore," I said softly. "I will," the nurse replied. "She'll be happy to hear that." "Thank you." I hung up and stared at the phone screen until it dimmed. The world outside the station was washed clean by the storm. Streetlights glowed against wet pavement. I stood under the awning and watched the reflection of red and blue lights fade as the patrol cars left one by one. When Detective Harris stepped outside beside me, he said, "You did the right thing, you know." "Sometimes doing the right thing still feels wrong," I said. "That's how you know it mattered." He handed me a card. "If you need anything, counseling, housing, legal advice, call this number. Don't disappear." "I won't." He tilted his head slightly. "You're not planning to go back there, are you?" "No," I said. "That house belongs to ghosts now." He gave a slow nod, then stepped away into the night. I walked to the corner where the streetlight flickered. My reflection shimmered in the puddles at my feet. For a moment I saw two faces there, mine and hers, Lena's. The lines between us were thinner than ever. I remembered what she'd said the last time she visited me in that sterile room with white walls. "I wish I could be strong like you." And I had told her, "You already are. You just need someone to remind you." Now it was my turn to remind her. I took out my phone again and sent a short message to the nurse's number she'd given me months ago. "Tell her the world outside the window is safe tonight." Then I walked toward the station exit, where the air smelled faintly of rain and freedom. The world looked different, sharper, clearer. Every light, every sound felt new. 10 years of waiting had come down to this moment. A woman standing alone under a storm-cleared sky, her sister finally free, her abuser finally powerless. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time, silence didn't mean fear. It meant peace. As I turned toward the cab waiting by the curb, the glass doors of the station caught my reflection once more. I stopped studying it. The same face, the same eyes, but the woman behind them was no longer trapped. I whispered to the glass, to her, to the memory of everything we'd endured. "It's over now." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The gates of Haven Ridge loomed ahead, tall and gray against the morning light. I hadn't seen them since the day I walked out wearing Lena's name tag instead of my own. A guard nodded as I signed in. "Back visiting again?" "Yes," I said. "One last time." The doors opened with their usual low hum, and the air inside still smelled like bleach and rain-soaked stone. For a moment it felt like time had folded back on itself, like I was walking into a memory, not a building. I followed the nurse down the long corridor toward the courtyard. She smiled softly. "She's been waiting all morning. Said she had something to tell you." My hands trembled slightly as I stepped outside. The courtyard was exactly as I remembered. The same cracked fountain, the same bench beneath the ash tree where I used to sit and imagine freedom. And there she was. Lena stood near the fountain, wearing my old hospital uniform. Her hair was pulled back, a little uneven, and her eyes, my eyes, were brighter than I'd ever seen them. When she turned and saw me, she froze. Then suddenly, her face broke open with emotion, and she ran straight into my arms. "You saved me," she whispered, voice shaking. I held her tighter. "No," I said. "We saved each other." She pulled back just enough to look at me. "You don't understand. I was dying in there. Every day. And then you—" "Stop," I said gently. "If we start counting who saved who, we'll never stop crying." She laughed through the tears. "That's fair. We sat down on the bench, the same one where I'd spent years watching seasons change through locked gates. The silence between us wasn't heavy this time. It was whole, filled with things that didn't need to be said. "Do you remember," she said softly, "how you used to draw escape routes on napkins during therapy?" I smiled. They weren't escape routes. They were reminders that there's always a door, even if it's hidden. "You always believed that," she said, "even when no one else did." "I had to," I said. "If I stopped believing, I'd never survive those walls." She nodded. "You were never the crazy one, you know." I glanced at her. Funny. That's exactly what I used to tell myself every night. "It's true," she said. "You were just too strong, too loud, too aware. The world doesn't like women like that. They call us unstable so they can feel safe." Her words cut straight through me. I looked at her, at me, sitting there, alive, breathing, whole. We were two versions of the same story finally finding their ending. "Do you still have nightmares?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But they don't own me anymore." She smiled faintly. "Me neither." We sat there for a while, watching a few leaves fall into the fountain. The ripples spread outward, breaking the reflection of the sky into fragments. I thought about all the years we'd lost, years buried under fear, guilt, silence. I thought about the bruises that had faded and the scars that hadn't. And for the first time, I realized that survival wasn't about erasing pain. It was about carrying it differently. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to hate the mirror here." "Why?" "Because every time I looked, I saw you. I thought I was losing myself to you. But now when I look, I see me again." "That's the point," I said. We were both trapped in each other's reflection. We just had to switch places to remember who we really were. She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the hem of her sleeve. "When I first woke up here after the switch, I panicked. I thought I'd never get out, but then I realized I didn't need to escape anymore. I was safe, and that's when I started to heal." "You found peace and stillness," I said. "And I found mine in movement." She looked at me for a long moment. "You don't plan to come back, do you?" I shook my head. "No, Havenridge taught me what I needed to learn. But I can't live behind glass anymore." She smiled, tears glinting again. "You shouldn't. You were never meant for walls." "Neither were you," I said. "I know," she whispered. "But for now I need them. Just until I'm ready." "That's okay," I said. "Freedom doesn't have to look the same for everyone." The nurse called out from the door, reminding us we had 10 minutes left. Lena leaned back against the bench, eyes closed for a moment. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" "All the time," I said, "but I'm not afraid of it anymore. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing myself," she said softly. "Now I think it's never trying to find out who I could be." "You've already started," I said. "You just don't see it yet." Her eyes met mine, clear, steady, and alive. "You're not the same woman I left here." "I couldn't be," I said. "You gave me your fear, and I turned it into something else." She smiled. "You turned it into fire." We both laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that hurts a little because it's real. The clock on the wall ticked closer to goodbye, but neither of us wanted to move. I looked at her and realized that for the first time, I wasn't looking into a mirror. I was looking at someone whole, someone I'd fought for and almost lost. When I finally stood, she reached for my hand. "Before you go," she said, "I need to tell you something." I waited. "You were never crazy, Maya," she said, her voice trembling but sure. "You were just born in a world that couldn't handle your strength." I felt something inside me break and mend at the same time. "Then I guess it's time the world learns," I said quietly. She squeezed my hand one last time before the nurse called her back. "Don't disappear," she said. "I won't," I promised. "We both have too much to live for." As she walked away, I watched her pause by the glass door and glance back. Her reflection overlapped mine for a brief second. 2 faces, 1 story, and then she was gone. Outside, the wind was cold but gentle. I stopped by the fountain and caught my reflection in the water. For years I'd avoided mirrors. They always reminded me of the woman who'd been broken, silenced, dismissed. But this time I didn't look away. The face staring back wasn't Lena's. It wasn't the patient or the victim or the imposter. It was mine, tired, scarred, alive, and unafraid. For the first time I saw my reflection and felt proud. And as I walked through the gates of Havenridge, leaving the ghosts behind, I realized something simple and extraordinary. I hadn't just switched places with my sister. I had switched places with my past, and I wasn't going back. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and rain. I stood near the back, hands folded, watching as Ethan was led in through the side door, handcuffed, head low. For a moment he looked smaller than I remembered, like a man finally seeing the walls he'd built closing around him. The judge's voice cut through the air. "Mr. Walker, this court sentences you to 10 years for aggravated assault and domestic abuse." A murmur rippled through the room. I didn't move. I just breathed. 10 years. Not enough to erase the scars, but enough to stop the bleeding. When it was over, Lena reached for my hand. Her fingers trembled. "It's really done," she whispered. "Yes," I said quietly. "It's over." Her eyes filled. "You think people like him ever understand what they've done?" "No," I said, "but understanding isn't the point anymore. Survival is." We walked out together, the gray sky pressing low over the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but their noise felt distant. For once, the world could talk all it wanted, and it wouldn't change what we'd already reclaimed. A few weeks later, the house was gone. The realtor's sign leaned in the yard, and strangers walked through its hollow rooms, deciding where to put their furniture. I didn't go inside. That place had already taken enough from us. Lena and Ella moved into a small apartment near the coast. The walls were bright yellow, the kind that made you feel sunlight even when it rained. The first time I visited, Ella ran into my arms. "Look," she said, pointing at the window. "You can see the ocean." The sea stretched out in the distance, blue and endless. I smiled. "That's freedom, sweetheart," I said. "Don't ever forget what it looks like." Lena leaned against the doorframe, watching us. "She sleeps through the night now," she said softly. "No more nightmares." "Good," I said. "She deserves that." "You do too," she said. I shook my head. "Maybe, but I'll take peace over sleep any day." She smiled faintly. "And what about you? Will you ever go back to Haven Ridge?" I looked out at the horizon. "No," I said. "I think I've had enough locked doors for one lifetime." She stepped closer. "You sure? You were safe there." "Safe isn't the same as free," I said. She nodded slowly. "You sound like you finally believe that." "I do," I said, because I had to fight for it. Freedom felt strange at first. Too quiet, too open. I wasn't used to mornings without schedules, without medications, without someone calling my name for roll. For a long time, I'd measured my life by walls and windows. Now there were only horizons. I rented a small cottage not far from Lena's apartment. It wasn't much. One bedroom, peeling paint, a garden that refused to grow straight. But it was mine. Every morning, I'd stand outside with a cup of coffee and watch the sun rise over the ocean. The first time I did, I cried. Not from sadness, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to see something so simple and so alive. One morning, Lena came by with Ella, carrying a basket of pastries. "You're really living like a hermit," she teased. "Just catching up on all the quiet I missed," I said. Ella grinned. "Grandma says you're a hero." I smiled. "Grandma's being generous." "She said you fought a monster," Ella continued. "And you won." I glanced at Lena. "Your mother's telling bedtime stories again." "She's telling the truth," Lena said softly. I knelt down to Ella's height. "You know what really happened?" "What?" "Two people were really scared for a long time," I said. "But one day they stopped running. That's all." She tilted her head. "And then they were brave?" "Yes," I said. "Then they were brave." She nodded like she understood, even if she didn't yet. "I want to be brave too." Lena smiled. "You already are." They stayed until evening, and when they left, the house felt full in a way it hadn't before. That night I sat by the window, watching the tide roll in. Freedom wasn't loud. It didn't come with fireworks or applause. It came with silence, the kind that finally felt earned. I thought about everything it had cost to get here. The lies, the switch, the fear, the man who'd tried to break us, the woman who almost lost herself, the years that would never come back. But if I could do it again, I would. Every step, every scar. Because it wasn't revenge that saved us. It was love. Love that demanded courage. Love that refused to stay silent. Love that turned two broken women into survivors. A week later, Lena called me. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "What happened?" "They're doing a piece about domestic survivors. They want to interview me." I hesitated. "Are you ready for that?" I think so, she said. I want people to know what silence costs. I smiled. Then tell them. You should come with me, she said. I don't think I need to, I replied. Your voice is enough. She was quiet for a moment. I wish you could see what you did for me. I already do, I said. Every time you speak without fear. The next morning, I stood on the beach as the sun rose. The light touched the water like gold. Waves rolled gently across my feet, washing away footprints before they could settle. Freedom had a price. It always did. For us, it was time, trust, and a piece of innocence we'd never get back. But what we gained was heavier: dignity, peace, and the power to choose our own story. I looked out across the horizon, the wind carrying the faint echo of a child's laughter from Lena's apartment. I don't regret what I did, I whispered to the sea. I only regret that it took so long for either of us to fight back. The waves answered in their steady rhythm, soft and sure like a heartbeat. Because in the end, it wasn't revenge that freed us. It was love, patient, fierce, unrelenting love. And love, when brave, is the sharpest weapon of all. As the sun climbed higher, the reflection on the water looked like glass. For a moment I saw my face in it, strong, steady, unafraid. The same woman who had once walked out of Havenridge wearing someone else's name. But this time I wasn't pretending. This time the reflection was mine. Courage isn't born from comfort. It's forged in the quiet moments when pain tries to break you, and you refuse to let it. I've learned that healing doesn't erase the scars. It gives them meaning. If you believe courage can grow from pain, share this story. Someone out there is still waiting to hear that they're not alone, that their voice, no matter how small, still matters. Because sometimes survival begins with a story.